New year, new hope. Transmitter 42. In this episode, we welcome Kimberley Huggins, a Low Carb Keto Certified specialist, to discuss the forthcoming administration, RFK Jr., and what it means for the food and health industry. The inclusion of RFK Jr. in the Trump administration has brought new light to the obvious issues concerning the well-being of American citizens. It's my hope this light will shine brightly and bring many people to the realization there is a better path forward. On Transmitter 42. Welcome back, Kimberley.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It is indeed New Year's Day here, recording our podcast. And welcome, everyone. So I had dinner with a friend of mine the other night, and we were catching up. He's a friend from college, a dear friend. And somehow the subject turned to various health issues, and I did mention the RFK Jr. being in the Trump administration, and he basically said, the popular mantra, oh, he is a vaccine denier. And I was like, well, you have to look at the man a little more broadly than that, my friend, and to see what is going on. He's obviously a very talented lawyer to be able to win the lawsuit, especially against, which was it? The farm glyco.
I think it's glyphosate. Against, I believe that's Monsanto.
Cool. And, of course, now he's focused big time on the food system, and I guess that's really his biggest focus at the moment. And, boy, does that need some light shown on it. So, what are your hopes for this year with, now that he's established himself, assuming he gets approved in the Senate, which I think is going to be no problem. I think people are pretty much just saying, okay, whatever, to all of Trump's appointees. Mm-hmm. Because if they fight, they're going to look pretty silly fighting against what is common sense.
Well, I think they've tried, but I think I do agree. I think some people will try and make certain points during confirmation hearings, but I do think ultimately his appointment will go through. I think there's going to be a lot of fodder for the media and various entities to discuss. But one of the things I really wanted to highlight in this chat is whatever you think about the Trump administration, or whatever you may think about, as John's friend, whatever you may think about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is, first of all, just to point out, you don't have to agree with every single position someone might have. Like, if you're a Trump supporter, you might not agree with everything one of Trump's cabinet picks thinks. That's okay. And if you're not a Trump supporter, I would also say that the fact that RFK Jr. has been chosen by Trump shouldn't make you blind to the fact that he has a lot of valid ideas and, areas that need attention. And I would just go back to one of the things that was said. I don't know if actually Robert F. Kennedy brought this up or if it was Nicole Shanahan, whoever it was. But that the health of our children specifically is something we should all be able to agree upon, regardless of what you believe politically, who you support, who you think is a devil. I mean, whatever you think. I think we should all be able to agree that we want our children to be healthy and we want them to succeed because they're the future of this nation. And if we don't help them be the literal best they can be, starting with their health, because they can't be the best they can be if they are in poor health. They will have limited brain function, limited physical capacity, and a shortened lifespan if we continue down the road we are on. So I do not think it is hyperbole to say this is it is a critical juncture. It is a national emergency. It is a national security issue. It may not feel that way, but it literally is.
All because the health system, health effects take so long to have an effect on the human body. Some people don't correlate inputs to outputs.
Right. So when you eat something that really your body doesn't like, you may not correlate any symptoms you may have with that right away. So to your point, it may be 30 years down the road before you get diabetes, but you are creating diabetes when you're 20. You don't just wake up one day when you're 50 with diabetes. Okay? And you've created it for 30 years. And I say you because it is 100% in your control. Now, a lot of people are going to think that is a controversial, horrific, horrible, incorrect statement. But it's not. I am certainly differentiating between type 2 and type 1. Type 1 is a physical defect. But type 2 is 100%. I'm going to say that again. It is 100% in your control. You can reverse it. You can control it. And you are in control of it. So I want to come back to the point here about the national security issue. People are being diagnosed now with diseases that were basically old age diseases. Okay? People are being diagnosed with dementia at 50. People are being diagnosed with diabetes at 30. 50% of our young people, 50% of our young people are pre-diabetic. And just to say a note about pre-diabetic, if you are pre-diabetic, you better be thinking of yourself as, I'm going to have diabetes if I don't change something. It is just a matter of time. So if you get a diagnosis of diabetes when you're 30 and you don't, it's a 15-year shortening of your lifespan if you don't change something. So there's not going to be a society
yes,
to function if we don't fix this.
Got to have people to have a society.
Correct.
And for all you people who are getting older, you have to have people younger than you to support the system that's going to give you a life later on.
Correct. Because, now I know some of you don't want to hear this either, because I get it. You paid into the system. But the people who are working now are paying for you because the government has squandered all the money. So if you don't have people in the system contributing, you're going to suffer too. And just another point about you have to have people for the society to function. We have a fertility problem. It's not just in this country, it's worldwide, but let's just stick here. We have a fertility problem in this country. It's directly related to our health. It's not just you have PCOS, you have bad luck. Oh, you don't have enough testosterone, you have bad luck. No. Testosterone levels are 50% lower than they were in the 70s. So, a young adult, a 20-year-old now, has the testosterone level of a 70-year-old in the 70s. It's quite shocking. Fertility rates are plummeting. They're going down. It's 1% every year they drop. Everybody acts like, oh, we just don't know why this is happening. No, we do. They just don't want to talk about it.
So I was in Tractor Supply about a month ago. I think I mentioned this before, but I'll tell the audience. A young man, overweight, I'd say in his early 20s is what it looked like. Nice guy. But he was mentioning to his coworkers there, they were talking at a moment and when there was a time to, and he mentioned that he was on high blood pressure medicine, or he was being put on it, I think. So he'd obviously been to a doctor concerning some sort of health issue. And I was thinking, you're much too young to have these issues, sir. I felt really sad for him. Well, 2 weeks ago, I was shopping again at Tractor Supply for Christmas, and I saw him walking in, and he was holding a sack containing a fast food lunch, and he was smoking a cigarette. And I was thinking, really? I mean, these are easy things to fix. Well, smoking certainly is an easy thing to fix. Everyone should know by now that smoking is not good for you. And if you're doing it, you do it with the full understanding that you're impacting your health. The food, maybe not so much as far as knowledge goes, even though you and I know that this kind of food is not good for you. So I see that Kennedy, if he gets affirmed, will be in charge of some 20 sub-things in the government, including the CDC, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institute for Health, and an awful lot of other things that aren't related necessarily to food and medicines. But nonetheless, that's a very powerful top position to be in. I'm wondering how he's going to influence it to help reach people. So it's the FDA that produces the food pyramid, correct?
I was just getting ready to ask you, is the USDA on his list? I don't know if that falls under Health and Human Services. I don't think it does. So that's going to be a problem because the USDA controls the food system. And right now it is set up to fund all the things that are making us sick and to push that agenda for those. And just to say, this is not even necessarily saying about, we're not talking about banning foods or banning, all that. No one's going to take your Coca-Cola away or your Twinkies or whatever is the thing. The goal, though, is to understand that this is a crisis. You are going to be affected some way, whether it's your personal health, people who are paying for you or who are going to be paying for you, the healthcare system that you will be a part of, your children, your grandchildren. So a side note, bring it back to the food there. I'm 56, so we all grew up with a certain amount of processed food in our diet. We all ate McDonald's, we all had whatever. But I'm telling you, the McDonald's today is not the McDonald's food you grew up on. Pop-Tarts is not what you had back in the day. It went back to McDonald's. McDonald's used to fry their French fries in beef tallow. They don't anymore. And it used to be just like potatoes, salt, beef tallow. There's literally dextrose, which is sugar, in McDonald's French fries now. Didn't used to be. So and that's kind of the long way around to say it's more about, I feel like it's more about educating people. I mean, people are, and I don't know if it's because they don't want to think about it or exactly what the reasoning is, but they seem to be 100% removed from the idea of what they eat directly affects their body, their physical performance, their mental performance, and their health, not just today, but in the long run. And I do think if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is confirmed, along with some of the other people that I have seen Trump want to head some of these organizations, I think these are good choices who understand the problem in our system, which is all of these organizations, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, the USDA, the health insurance companies, the doctors even. And I wouldn't even necessarily blame the doctors because of how they're taught. But it's a rigged system. It's all set up to benefit from people being sick.
To your question earlier, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, is a parallel to the Health and Human Services.
So he has
to
no
both departments.
control over it.
Correct. Yeah.
So this is why it would be an issue, and I don't know who Trump has tapped for USDA.
Looks like Stephen Vaden is a deputy secretary.
What's his background? Oh, as deputy secretary.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the primary is.
Okay, well, hopefully there will be some consultation there, because the USDA is responsible for your kids' school lunches. Okay?
Brooke Rollins. Don't know anything about him.
Never heard that person. I would like to know a little bit about their background, but the USDA is responsible for your kids' school lunches, and it is basically the biggest fast food chain in the country because your kids are eating crap at school.
Just looking at this tree of power, the USDA is responsible for agricultural issues and apparently the food supply, which can be competing interests. So it's
Correct.
no surprise that they produce guides that benefit agriculture.
Right, but the things that benefit agriculture in our country means the things that benefit corn and wheat and soy, which are all the cheap things, because the food industry is, and this is just economics, in and of itself, it's just about making money, making products as cheaply as possible, right? And our government has set up these farm bills to facilitate that. And so that all facilitates the ultra-processed food industry, which is the majority of what we're consuming now. 70 to 80% of a child's diet is not even real food now. It's ultra-processed food. So, for example, cereal, I know we all love our cereal. Cereal is the American way. My kids had cereal. I know our oldest especially, when he was playing football, he would consume an entire box of cereal before he went to bed. Nothing for them to sit down and eat 3 or 4 bowls. Okay?
Show you how empty they are.
It's junk food. I know no one wants to hear that. We love cereal. We grew up on cereal. Cereal is all I ate before I went to school growing up. Okay? So, just a side note, I'm going to throw this little tidbit in under what can you do to change something. One of the most important things that you need to do for your children is stop feeding them junk in the morning or letting them choose junk. Okay? Now, I get it. We all have to get up and go to work, and it's da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, got to get out the door, got to rush, got to this, got to that, da-da-da-da-da. Don't have time for this, don't have time for that. You don't have time not to, because you're setting your kid up for failure. We all want our kids to do well in school. You know, so your goal is to set them off the best you can. So your kid needs to have meat and eggs in the morning before they go to school.
Protein and fat.
They cannot, do not give them yogurt, because most yogurt is pudding. I mean, let's face it. Most yogurt you buy in the store, unless you're getting the container of plain Greek yogurt, okay, you're buying pudding. Chobani is pudding. I can't think of all the names, but there's so much sugar in them. They're flavored yogurt. It's pudding. Don't give them yogurt. Don't give them donuts. Don't give them bagels. Don't give them toast. Don't give them cereal. Don't give them cereal. Don't give them cereal. Okay? Now, if you're so busy in the morning that you don't have time, please pick whenever you have it, pick the day you're not working, and that's the day you need to fix breakfast for the week. You can cook bacon ahead. It'll keep in the fridge. Expand your idea of what you eat for breakfast. You can have ground beef for breakfast. I'm telling you, scrambled eggs with ground beef, little cheese on it, it's really good. You've got to divorce yourself. And this is hard because Americans are slaves to convenience. You've got to divorce yourself from the quick and the easy and think about what is right. I would also say leaving the house and driving by the Chick-fil-A window on the way to school or the McDonald's window on the way to school, that's a no too. You have no control over the food you get out. When you make your food at home, it's cheaper and you know what you're getting.
So, to segue a moment, the cereal industry was created out of Kellogg's, and it's tied with the Seventh-day Adventists back in the late 1800s, was it?
That's probably when it started, and that is certainly a rabbit hole. I don't know. We want to go down that.
A quick summary. I mean, they were trying to get people to be vegetarians, if I recall.
Okay,
right?
yes. And this is not to upset any specific religiosity in the audience. But they, and I'm not saying all teach that, but it did so happen that this certain group wanted to produce a certain type of lifestyle in people, and they ended up funding and being responsible for a lot of the dietitian schools, and the Kellogg's brothers were Seventh-day Adventists, and one was a doctor and one was the businessman. And the doctor had come up with this food that he thought was appropriate for he actually worked in a mental hospital. And the belief was at the time that people who ate meat were more aggressive than people who didn't eat meat. So he developed this basically tasteless food for people to eat, and it was supposed to like calm them down. And that was cornflakes. That was the first cereal, Kellogg's cornflakes. And his brother wanted to market it to the masses, and he didn't really want to. He was more about studying his patients and doing all that. But the brother took the formula and then developed all the cereals, and And of course, now it's even different than back then, because at least then it was real food. Now it's all chemicals. And it is all chemicals because our government allows them to get away with it.
All you gotta do is read the label, everybody.
They're not allowed in Europe. They're not allowed to sell a product with all that list of chemicals. Cornflakes or Pop-Tarts or Mountain Dew, even. In Europe, the ingredient list is very different from the ingredient list in America. So that kind of...
That's fine. And just to close the topic a little bit, all the Second-day Adventists that I know are definitely not vegetarians. They are kosher, interestingly. But so this must be...
It's an offshoot.
An offshoot of some sort. And there's other ones I won't get into, but...
But I will also say I still think that... But there's two things here. The Seventh-day Adventist influence in the dietetics and the dietitians was so early on in that industry, if you want to call it that, or in that academia level, that it's persisted. And that particular sect really believes that people should eat nothing but plants. Now, I don't know if they distinguish between vegetarian and vegan or whatever, but they don't believe in consuming meat because they believe it inflames the passions. And that was also all part of the time period back in the early 1900s. That was like a belief in society where they believed you had to regulate like different parts of the body or certain kinds of emotion, and like if you were angry all the time, it meant your liver was inflamed, and if you were, there was all these correlations. But it also it correlated with the temperance movement. And so there was a movement in society to remove to make people peaceful, to make them quiet, and they all believed that this was part of it, which they weren't entirely wrong, because just on a side note, there's been studies done that like when they take ultra-processed food away from kids in juvenile hall and give them real food, their violence level goes down. So it is about the food, but it's not about meat versus plants. But that's a whole nother topic. Back to the two ideologies. So you do have the constant ideology that it has infused into the nutrition world of a plant-based diet being healthier, which is false. I will just add, by the way. But it is also influenced now by a globalist ideology that is trying to force everyone in the world onto factory foods. I mean, there's a reason in Europe they're taking, literally, the government is taking farmland away from people who have farmed for generations because they say cows are killing the planet or, something like that. So my point is these two ideologies see common ground and they're working together to they each have their own goals they're trying to accomplish, and they're doing this. And this is kind of like getting way off topic of RFK, but maybe we can bring it back around. I'm not saying he espouses any ideology. I certainly hope he succeeds in any number of things he wants to get done. But the way to health for human beings is not a plant-based diet. It's just not. If you believe in creation or evolution, whatever you believe in, a human being has not come to be to consume a plant-based diet. We need animal products to be our healthiest. And we certainly need real, unadulterated food to be our healthiest.
And the people who would argue that, we're just the same as gorillas, they've obviously gone off a different path. They have organs that we don't, that help them
Correct.
ferment, essentially, plant-based materials to the point where they can be used beneficially for them. We do not have that.
Right. So to your point, to say that, everybody think of the gorilla. Every gorilla you've ever seen, I would assume baboons too, but gorillas for sure. We all know they have a huge stomach, a big fat. It would be like if they, a beer belly for a gorilla. That's what it looks like. Okay. That's because their stomach is all, and their intestines, their digestive system is all blowed up because it's fermenting. It's literally a fermenting factory in their gut. They have a process where they can make from their plant food, they can make the fat and the protein, basically. I mean, that's not scientific. That's not chemistry. But that's basically what they're doing for what their body needs. We don't have that. We don't have that capability. So, and when you eat too much plant material, anybody who has any GI issues, like serious GI issues, if you go to a gastroenterologist, one of the first things they will tell you is stop eating roughage. Stop eating plant material. Stop eating all this raw, roughage. They don't want you. Okay, that's because Our guts aren't meant to eat that stuff. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to, you could never eat it. Like, you can. I'm just saying the optimal condition for humans is to eat animal-based food. And that's how you're going to be the healthiest. And so when your kid is young, that's what their brain is growing, just like every other part of them. And your brain takes 20% of the energy your body needs to function. It's an energy beast. It's the hog. And it will steal anything from your entire body if it's not getting fed first. So something else is going to suffer. My point is back to what you're feeding your kids. This is going to sound really harsh. And I know if you don't know what you don't know. But you've got to feed your kids real food or you are harming them.
I think you mentioned at one point the food system in this country is child abuse.
It is. It totally is. And it's shocking and frustrating and it makes me angry and all the things that our government allows it to continue. And it's not even talked about. And that's, I guess, one thing that I'm hoping with RFK Kennedy Jr.'s appointment, if we can at least start talking about some of these things, and if we could just get a few of these things, like I'm going back to the USDA and the food at the schools. So if you could get, and I'm using this example because we all know the government uses money to bribe to get things done. You know, they always say, well, we're going to take your federal dollars if you don't do X. So what I think needs to happen is the schools receive money from the federal government. The federal government is in charge of your kids' lunch program. Now, that all started because they wanted to make sure that the kids were, we don't want any starving children. We're going to make sure the kids are getting fed. The kids are starving now because they're starving in that they're getting calories, but they're not getting nutrition. They're not getting what their cells need to function, which is why they feel like they have to eat every 2 hours. They're not getting what their brain needs to function. Okay? So if you looked at just, a higher, and you said, okay, this is federal money that you have to serve, the food you're serving has to be only 10% ultra-processed food in a school. That's all it's allowed. And you do the same thing for nursing homes, prisons, hospitals. They all take federal money of some kind. They all take federal money. And, you may say, well, it's not right to bribe. Well, you got to use what you got. So if that's how you can get them to cooperate, you take Medicare money in your nursing home. If you don't serve these people real food, at least 80% or 90% of their calories from real food, now we would have to define real food, but you're not getting any money. You're not getting your federal money. You see how fast they would cooperate.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they've been coerced into what they're doing now because
Correct.
of federal money, because of some sort of erroneous idea about what the food supply should be.
And I would say to anyone, if you have visited someone in a hospital lately or a nursing home, when they bring in the food, how many people want food from outside? Now, if a person's in a hospital and you're bringing them in Chick-fil-A, you're not doing them any favors. But having said that, my point is, most hospitals have crap food. They're feeding people absolutely nothing but ultra-processed food because it's easy, it lasts longer, and it's cheaper. That's why they're doing it.
What I always mention is the proverbial slice of bread from the loaf that can sit on the shelf for 6 months and not mold. because it's got some sort of antibiotic on it.
Now, that you may think that's great as far as it doesn't cost you more. But your trade-off is you're eating dead food. It's doing nothing for you. As a matter of fact, it's actually poisoning you. You just don't know it. You just don't feel it.
In the short run.
In the short term. Well, actually, I would say you do feel it, but everyone is so conditioned in our society now, we think that's how we're supposed to feel.
Yeah,
You're
I
not.
think the classic one is the people that claim IBS, and they think it's a normal part of their life. And then they also exclaim that they cook every day from a box.
Right. And so to your point, if you've got IBS, you're being told, because you see the commercials on TV that are explaining to you how you have a condition. Okay, well, the implication there is you have a condition that you can't do anything about. That's not your fault. It's just not so. And I realize that by saying this confers a certain responsibility on people. But I would just say I would prefer that to the slavery of being ill and on medications at some point in your life if you don't change it. Because that's what is going to happen.
By design, some might say.
It's totally by design.
Well, RFK's potential position here looks to be a lot of different things that aren't health related, but the big key ones for health, like I mentioned before. The Food and Drug Administration, of course, is not under him. I wonder, though, who influences the American Diabetes Association with their insane rhetoric on what they consider to be a proper diet for a diabetic, which is full of carbohydrates and some sugars.
Right. Well, to your point, I think the FDA is under HHS. It's the USDA that's not under HHS.
You're correct, yep.
So,
FDA. So he does have some influence. That's good.
It is, because what has got to happen is right now, and I don't think people understand this, you go to your doctor and you expect him to give you the best health information, okay? But your doctors are not trained in nutrition. So first of all, that would be shocking. They know absolutely nothing about nutrition. Your doctors go to medical schools that are funded by pharma. So they are taught to medicate. Their tool is their prescription pad. That's the first thing they go to. Whatever your symptom is, they're taught to medicate it or to refer you to another doctor, a specialist who doesn't look at anything else going on in your body. And he'll either recommend a medication or a procedure, because now you're on the train. And as long as you're taking that and as long as you're participating, I'm sorry, you're a slave. Now, I know that's harsh language for people to hear. I get it. But I'm saying that because, I mean, do you want to, if you had to choose, if you're at the fork in the road and you could see the future, and I'm telling you the future, I'm going to put it in the context of diabetes, okay? If you don't change what you're doing in your life and you go the route of conventional medical wisdom, they're going to tell you you have diabetes and they're going to give you a medication. Now, you think your diabetes is being controlled because every time you go to the doctor and you get your A1C measured, it's right about the same. But what you don't know is your insulin is still going up. And one day you're going to fall off the cliff. And then you're going to have more medication. And then you're going to have injections. And then you're going to be injecting insulin. And the more insulin you have to take, the more you're going to need. Because Does it really make sense? I want you to just think about this logically. If you are insulin resistant, which is what you are if you're diabetic, does it make sense? Your body has too much insulin. So why are you injecting more insulin?
They would say to tamp down the sugar.
So my point is, you keep going down this road, and the end of that road is blindness, loss of hearing, limbs amputated, feet amputated, wounds that never heal, going to a wound clinic every week to have a nurse clean and bandage your wound that won't heal. Worst case scenario, your kidneys fail. You're in kidney dialysis 2 or 3 times a week. If you have to have kidney dialysis, that is your life. You are not traveling anymore. You are not doing anything. Your life is you wake up, you get kidney dialysis, and then you think about how you want to be back there in 48 hours to do it all over again. So that's the road you're on. Or you can choose to adjust your lifestyle and what you eat, because that's 80% of it is what you eat, and not have that future. At least, and I'm not saying you maybe, like if you've been diabetic, you might not ever come off all your medication. But would you rather be on not very much medication, or would you like to be the average person who's on 7 or more pills over the age of 50? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be there. And I say this as someone who was pre-diabetic, and everybody in my extended family has some form of diabetes. Because if any person listening to my voice, continues to eat the standard American diet, you will be a diabetic. It's just a matter of when.
Just a matter of when.
But I think bringing it back to RFK, some of the things that he has said that he is going to do that could be impactful. First of all, you've got to stop pharma funding medical schools.
So he's identified that particularly
Yes.
in his agenda.
You've got to stop allowing the revolving door between pharmaceutical companies and the FDA. Right now, what you have is people who are at the FDA for how long? 2, 3, 4, 5 years. They leave, and then they go and sit on the board of Pfizer. You've got to stop. So back to the medical schools. Okay, they've got to have a nutrition class. The doctors have to know about nutrition. 90% of the med schools don't have nutrition. The med schools, I've mentioned, the med schools are funded by pharma. To just put it in perspective, which I think is interesting, we hear all the time about big oil. Big oil has all the money. Big oil in D.C. funds the lobbyists, blah, 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 big oil. Pharma spends 5 times more money in D.C. than big oil does. What do you think that money's buying them? What are they getting for that money?
Influence.
Right. So, I know RFK Jr. wants to tackle the money that goes to the media. Pharma funds, depending on which statistics you use, 50 to 75% of legacy media, CNN, CBS, ABC, fill in the blank, is funded by pharma. Now, we just see the commercials, okay? And I think we can all agree we're sick.
The dancing.
Sick
Yeah.
of the medicine commercials on TV. It's ridiculous. Do you know we're only one of 2 countries that allows that? Nobody else in the world except crazy New Zealand allows their people to be propagandized, which that's exactly what it is. And I would just also say,
That explains Jacinda.
we see the drug commercial on TV, And it makes us aware of the drug. And we think, well, they just want us to buy that drug. That's the tip of the iceberg. What they're doing with paying for the ad on TV, they're not trying to convince us to get the drug. They're paying the media companies off so they don't get investigated. They don't get scrutinized. They don't get their feet held to the fire about anything because the media is bought and paid for. If somebody's giving you 75% of your funding, you're not going to say boo to them. You're going to say, please, sir, may I have some more?
It's kind of like in A Christmas Carol where they toast the founder of the feast, even though they all hated him.
Right.
The founder of the media right now is in large part advertising revenue from the pharma companies. And all you got to do is turn on the TV, you can see it. It's very obvious.
Right. And so, I mean, something like that needs to be tackled. Something like there should be, this is a perfect example. Love me some college football. This is like the time, obviously, right now. So, watching the college football game the other day, Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. You might as well have had the Marlboro Cigarette Bowl because now I know people love Frosted Flakes. It was my daddy's favorite cereal. I know people love them some Frosted Flakes. Okay, but we've already established that cereal is junk food, and it is because there's no nutritional value at all. I don't care that it says fortified with blah, 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 vitamins and minerals. Okay, that's synthetic junk that your body can't even absorb. So, but to just set that aside, children should not be bombarded with cartoon characters and bright colors and all these things that appeal to them. This is another thing people don't understand. They use advertising because it works. They're not doing it because they just got money to spend. And there's countries in the world where advertising to children is banned. In Chile, there is no commercials on before 10 p.m., like from 6 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. at night. Commercials like that are not allowed because it so affects children. So stuff like that, and how we advertise, stuff like that needs to be looked at. You've got to stop, like all of the researchers get grants from the very people that are screwing us. The ultra-processed food industry pays for all their studies that say, no, we're not hurting people. They fund them. Of course, it's not going to say they're bad. But to your point of like the American Diabetes Association, that's just like, that would be like, Anheuser-Busch funding Alcoholics Anonymous. Coca-Cola gives money to the American Diabetes Association. You think American Diabetes Association is going to say, don't drink Coca-Cola? No, they don't. They all say, all things in moderation. Okay. I know you love your soda, but sorry to break it to you, soda's diabetes water.
Pure and simple.
It's straight up. There's absolutely nothing. If you're drinking soda, it's a habit. You know it is if you're honest. It's a habit like anything else. An expensive habit. There's nothing physically valuable about it. But, you have a lot of these. I mean, American Diabetes Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, they're all funded by the organizations and then they're beholden to them because they receive so much money from them. So they're not going to say it's bad. It's just like back in the day. The cigarette industry bought all the food companies in the 90s and used the same model. And they paid scientists to come up with studies that said sugar wasn't the problem. And of course now it's it's sugar, but it's so much more. It's the fact that we're not even eating real food.
Sugar, carbohydrates, and non-real food.
Right.
Well, you mentioned earlier about medical schools need to have a nutrition class. But I think we've seen some nutritionists who not necessarily espousing a healthy diet.
Truth.
Again, moderation, carbohydrate heavy. And there's this undertone, especially when we were looking at the ADA guidelines. They all have this hint of vegetarian.
Yes, they do. They want you to be low fat. And this goes back to your body needs animal fat. Okay? It does. It craves it. It's actually the only thing that will create satiety in your body, which means you're satiated, which means you feel full. Now, to say that, that's not to say, like, I don't want anyone to go out and be like, oh, I'm going to eat all the fat. And then if you're eating high carb with the high fat, that's not good. That's just a recipe for triglycerides overload in your body, which is not a good thing. But they want you on this path that is basically going to set you up for failure, because they still push they push a plant-based lifestyle, and they're still very much oriented around calories in, calories out, and exercising. And while I do think everyone should exercise, there's a lot of reasons to exercise. But because muscle is great. Muscle is longevity. If you don't have muscle when you get old, you're in trouble. But exercise is not the best way to lose weight. It's very poor for losing weight, actually. And in the long run, you can't
outrun a bad diet.
Well, you can't outrun a bad diet, and just the fact you're exercising, that will drive hunger. And you will never, like, you might can handle hunger initially. Your body will be like, okay, we're going to eat less and all that. But eventually, your body will just say, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're dropping our metabolism because we're going to survive. That's how your body looks at it. So it will work short term, but long term, hunger wins every time.
Okay, so this underpinning that's driving the vegetarian thing, I mean, it's permeated in various different places, including the ADA's guide being the most recent example. Do you think, what is RFK's stance on meat?
I couldn't tell you what his personal...
I mean, he deep fried that turkey in tallow for Thanksgiving.
Okay, well, I guess he's a meat eater. I mean, I would imagine, and I would just like to clarify. So I don't think you can be your healthiest if you aren't eating animal-based diet. Now, and when I say that, I don't feel like the meat should be like an afterthought. It should be the centerpiece of your diet. But that's another episode.
Right. Well,
but
balanced is a different, balanced, meat heavy, fat heavy, everything else more light.
What I would say is lots of times vegans are very concentrated on eating clean. Now, I'm being stereotypical, but generally, they're very interested on eating clean, not eating a bunch of chemicals, not eating a bunch of fake food. They want to know where their food comes from. They're really invested in all that. Okay? So that's usually good because that is healthy. And if you're looking at your food like that, that's half the battle. If you're thinking about what you're eating, that's half the battle. Now, in the long run, unless you're extremely wealthy and can afford to supplement what you're not getting in a vegan diet, which is vegans believe nothing from animals. No animal anything. No animal byproduct. So like
milk,
no
butter.
Eggs, no milk, no butter, no cheese, none of that. you're going to be nutritionally deficient. Unless you can afford, like if you're a celebrity and you can afford to supplement all the amino acids and all the protein and all the B vitamins and the A vitamins and the D vitamins and the E and the K, because you don't get any of that with plants. You have to supplement all that. So if you're independently wealthy and can do it, fine. Most people can't do that. So over time, you're just going to be sick. Now, vegetarians are different because lots of times you see people who are like, oh, I'm vegetarian. They think they're being healthy, but they're still eating all the processed food crap. So they're not healthy. And then the fact that they don't eat meat makes them even less so because they're not eating clean. They're just not eating meat and they think they're being healthy. So I just lost train of thought. But, the first thing is to be looking at where your food, where it's coming from and what's in it. And I would say eat as clean as you can. If you don't have money to buy grass-fed organic, yes, that's nice. But don't let that keep you from eating better. What's my saying all the time? It's kind of the same. Perfect is the enemy of good. Okay? So you can go to Costco and get the tube of ground beef, the 5-pound tube of ground beef. That's a lot cheaper than the ribeye steak. Okay? But, and if we're being honest, don't just say, well, I can't afford organic and I can't afford grass-fed and I can't afford pasture-raised, so I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. That's a cop-out. Okay? Stop buying the junk and then you'll have more money to spend on the good stuff, which is meat. However, whatever you can. Like, I'm serious. If all you can afford is Spam is better for you than Taco Bell. Spam is better for you than Chick-fil-A. Spam is better for you than Impossible Burgers.
Well, in conclusion, I just went to the FDA.gov site looking up the food pyramid. I wound up with something called myplate.gov.
Yeah.
Everyone should go have a look at that right now and then see what it looks like in 2 months. It'd be interesting to see. They've got a pretty much even distribution of fruits, grains, protein, and vegetables with a little side of dairy. And gosh, that's grains and fruits. Half of that is basically sugar and carbs, which is way too much, I would think. So we'll see.
Well, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I mean, RFK doesn't have any sway over that.
He does on this one. It's under him. So
the goal is to set things up for changes. So you've got to start at the root level. You've got to get all the conflicts of interest out of these organizations. That's the biggest thing, because it's all set up. When I say the system is rigged against us, it literally is. Everything is set up to profit from you being sick and from your kids being sick and starting Ozempic at the age of 10, which is literally what they want, and being on it for the rest of your life.
Customer for life.
Right. So the goal of doctors through Obamacare is not to get people well. The metric that they measure is if people are on medication. You don't want to be on medication because all medications have side effects. All. And it's only going to create a problem later on. So the point I mean, this is such a big topic, but the point is there's going to be a lot of pushback from RFK, pushback against what he wants to do, because there's a lot of money involved. We have to support him and the changes he wants to make for our children and our country moving forward.
And on that, thank you again for another episode. I appreciate you highlighting it. I'm rooting for RFK. I'm not in the same party as his, but this is a great time to have a unity party do something different. We'll see what happens. Thanks for listening to the Transmitter 42 podcast. If you would like to send us feedback or suggestions, please email us at radioshow@t42.am or send a note via U.S. mail to Transmitter 42 LLC, P.O. Box 100, Remington, Virginia 22734. All our podcasts are available for your favorite player. Visit t42.am for our catalog.
Transmitter 42.